I want to start today with a scenario that I think is going to feel uncomfortably familiar to pretty much everyone listening.
Oh boy.
It's late at night, the house is quiet, you're standing in the kitchen, bathed in that weird fluorescent glow of the refrigerator light.
I know this scene well.
You open the freezer, and there it is, the Holy Grail, a pristine, untouched tub of Ben & Jerry's.
The siren call of the modern pantry.
Exactly. And you tell yourself the lie we all tell ourselves. I'm just going to have one spoonful, just a little taste.
Just one. Famous last words.
But then, the spoon hits the cardboard at the bottom, 10 minutes have passed, the tub is completely empty, and just to add insult to injury, maybe you wash it down with a jumbo soda.
Right, and then comes a crash.
And immediately the regret sets in. You feel heavy, you feel guilty, and you ask yourself that question, why did I do that? I know the science, I know the sugar crash is coming. Why do I have zero self-control?
It's the universal modern struggle. We beat ourselves up over it constantly. We call it a lack of willpower or a character flaw or, just stress eating.
Yeah, that's my go-to.
But the reality is actually much more interesting and, frankly, much more forgiving. If you look at the source material we've pulled for today, that moment in the kitchen isn't a failure of your character.
Oh.
It is a feature of your history.
That is the hook for today's deep dive.
Mm.
We are stripping away the modern world and looking at the software that runs our brains. We're going back to the era of the hunter-gatherer.
Specifically, that massive stretch of time between the cognitive revolution, roughly 70,000 years ago, and the agricultural revolution, about 12,000 years ago.
This is the era that truly shaped us, isn't it?
It's everything. And to understand that Ben and Jerry's paradox, you have to look at what evolutionary psychologists call the gorging gene.
This theory completely changed how I view my own cravings. It's not just, I like sugar. It's survival.
Precisely. Let's transport ourselves back 30,000 years. You are a forager in the savannah.
Okay. You don't have a supermarket. You don't have a vending machine. In fact, high-calorie, sugary food is exceptionally, it basically doesn't exist.
Right.
With one major exception, ripe fruit.
And that's seasonal. It's not there year-round, so it's a big deal when it shows up.
A huge deal. So imagine a Stone Age woman walking through the forest. She spots a fig tree. And this isn't just any tree. It is groaning with ripe, sugary figs.
The jackpot.
It is the absolute jackpot. Now, in 2024, the sensible thing to do is eat a few and, save the rest for later.
Put them in some Tupperware.
But in 30,000 BC, you have a problem. You don't have Tupperware, and you definitely don't have a refrigerator.
Plus, you've got competition.
Serious competition. I mean, if she leaves those figs on the tree, the local baboon band is going to swing by, and within an hour, maybe less, that tree will be stripped bare.
Okay, so moderation is actually a terrible strategy. It's the worst possible strategy. The most logical, rational, survival-positive thing to do is not moderation. It is excess. It is to sit down and eat as many figs as you physically can right there on the spot.
Yeah, shovel them in.
You need to pack those calories into your body before anyone or anything else gets them.
So the people who had that instinct to gorge, the ones who could literally eat until they were sick, they were the ones who survived the lean times that followed.
They were, and they passed that gene down to us. It's a survival jackpot.
But here's the tragedy of the modern human.
Our DNA is still living in the savannah, but we are living in high-rise apartments. We've built a world of infinite calories, but our biological software hasn't received the update.
It's running on a 50,000-year-old operating system.
Exactly. Evolutionary change moves at a glacial pace, while our cultural and technological change moves at light speed. So when you see that ice cream, your brain isn't seeing dessert.
It's seeing the fig tree.
It's seeing the fig tree, and it is screaming at you, eat it all before the baboons get here.
It's a classic case of outdated software running on incompatible hardware. And that's really the mission statement for this entire deep dives, isn't it?
It is.
We are trying to understand ourselves, our sexuality, our social structures, our capacity for violence, and even our happiness by getting inside the heads of our ancestors.
We have to. If you look at the timeline of humanity, the last 200 years of industry, or even the 10,000 years of farming, that is a blink of an eye. It's nothing.
A rounding error, really.
For the vast, vast majority of our existence, we were foragers. We were nomads. That is our factory setting.
And when we start looking at that factory setting, especially when it comes to our social lives, things get incredibly complicated and really fascinating.
Oh, they get messy.
There is this massive, raging debate among anthropologists and historians
Mhm.
about what the natural human family even looks like.
And the source is basically split into two major camps.
Wow.
You have the ancient commune theory versus the eternal monogamy theory.
This feels like one of the most contentious topics in the field because
Yeah.
it challenges the core of how we organize our lives today.
It absolutely does. On one side, you have the ancient commune theory. These scholars argue that the nuclear family, mom, dad, and the kids in a separate house, is a pretty modern invention.
A recent thing.
A very recent thing, or at least a byproduct of agriculture and the idea of property. They believe that for most of history, humans lived in bands where there was no private property, no exclusive relationships, and crucially, no clear concept of fatherhood.
Now, when you say no concept of fatherhood, we aren't suggesting they didn't know that sex led to babies, right? I mean, these were incredible observers of nature. Surely they knew the mechanics.
They likely knew the mechanics, sure, but they may have interpreted them very differently. There is a fascinating concept found in some indigenous cultures called collective fatherhood.
Collective fatherhood.
The belief here isn't that a child comes from a single instance of conception, a single man's sperm,
Right.
but that a child is built up, accumulated in the womb, through the sperm of multiple men over time.
This part of the research just blew my mind. It completely reframes promiscuity. It's not just free love in a sort of hedonistic sense.
No,
It's a genetic strategy.
it is. The sources point to the Barí Indians in South America as a modern comparison. In their traditional beliefs, a pregnant woman is actually encouraged to have sex with multiple men.
Okay.
And she's not doing it randomly. She is, in a way, curating the child's traits. She actively seeks out the best hunter, the best storyteller, the strongest warrior, the kindest lover.
Because the belief is that the child absorbs the essence, the qualities of each man.
Exactly. It's like a cocktail. She
Right.
wants the child to have the hunter's aim, the warrior's muscle, and the storyteller's wit. It's like crowdsourcing the perfect human.
And the social brilliance of this, I mean, even if the biology is wrong, is just undeniable. If I'm a man in that tribe and I don't know for sure which kid is mine,
Then you have to assume they all might be yours, in a way.
so you protect all of them.
You have a vested interest in protecting and feeding every single child in the band. It eliminates paternal uncertainty and binds the tribe together in this web of mutual obligation that a nuclear family just can't replicate.
And the proponents of this theory, they argue that this is why we struggle so much today, right?
That's the core of their argument. They look at high divorce rates, infidelity, the general messiness of modern dating, and they say, see, this is what happens when you force a communal animal into a monogamous box.
The square peg in a round hole argument.
Exactly. But, and this is a big but, we have to look at the other side.
The eternal monogamy camp.
The eternal monogamy school arguments are just as strong. They claim that, no, monogamy and the nuclear family are hardwired core human behaviors. They argue that even in ancient bands, the society was cellular,
What do you mean by cellular?
composed of distinct, jealous couples and their offspring, little family units within the larger band.
And their evidence is basically the status quo, right? I
Mm.
mean, they look around and say monogamy is the norm in the vast majority of cultures we see today.
Right. If the commune was so natural, why is it so rare now? But here is the frustrating part, and I think this is good for listeners to understand about history in general. We cannot settle this debate.
We just don't know for sure.
We simply do not know.
That seems wild to me. We have skeletons, we have tools, we have these amazing cave paintings. How can we not know something as fundamental as how they lived?
It comes down to a problem of materials. The source material refers to this as the Wood Age, and I just love that distinction.
The Wood Age, not the Stone Age.
Exactly. We call it the Stone Age because stone is what survived.
Yeah.
Flint arrowheads, stone axes, that's what sits in our museums. But that creates a massive preservation bias.
It tricks us into thinking their world was just gray and cold and hard.
Precisely. But the vast majority of their tools, their art, their shelters, their infrastructure was made of perishable materials. Wood, bamboo, leather, bark, grass.
So all the important stuff rotted away.
All of it. Imagine if they had intricate totem poles, or massive wooden halls, or complex leather tapestries describing their marriage laws. All of that is just gone.
The outline uses this great analogy of a future historian trying to understand us.
Yes, this really brings it home. Imagine a historian in the year 4000 trying to understand the social life of a teenager in 2024.
Okay.
But some catastrophe has wiped out all digital records. No texts, no Instagram, no emails, no phone logs, nothing. All that survives is the physical snail mail in a drawer somewhere.
So they find, what, a bank statement and a birthday card from grandma?
Exactly. If you tried to reconstruct the complexity of a modern romance or a friendship based only on physical letters, you would miss the entire heartbeat of the culture. You'd miss the late-night texts, the shared memes, the nuances.
You'd get a completely distorted picture.
That is exactly where we are with ancient foragers. We have their snail mail, the stones and bones, but we've lost the digital richness of the Wood Age. We've lost the conversation.
So in the absence of that hard evidence, we tend to fill in the blanks with what we can see around us.
We do.
We look at modern hunter-gatherers, like the Kalahari Bushmen, and we say, okay, they live like this, so our ancestors must have lived like this too.
Which is what the source calls the trap of modern analogies. It is a really dangerous assumption for a few key reasons.
The first one being geography, right?
Yes, first and foremost, geography. Modern foragers have been pushed into the absolute margins of the planet. The Kalahari Desert, the Arctic tundra, the deep Amazon. These are places where agriculture is impossible.
Right. You don't hunt and gather in the Kalahari because it's a fun lifestyle choice. You do it because it's the only way to survive there.
Of course. And that extreme environment dictates a specific lifestyle. Small bands, constant movement, a certain kind of social structure born of scarcity.
But ancient foragers didn't live in those places.
No, they had the prime real estate. Imagine a hunter-gatherer society living in the Yangtze River Valley or the Rhine Valley or the Nile Delta before farming took over.
Those places were, I mean, they would have been like the Garden of Eden.
Teeming with life, fish, game, berries, lush vegetation. The abundance would have been off the charts compared to a desert.
And that abundance changes everything.
It changes everything. They could have supported much higher population densities. They could have stayed in one place for months or even years. They likely had much more complex, perhaps even hierarchical social structures than the small egalitarian bands we see in deserts today.
And there's another problem with that analogy, too. The influence of their neighbors.
That's the second big point. No modern forager group is a pristine fossil. They've all had contact with and been influenced by their agricultural and industrial neighbors for centuries, sometimes millennia.
So they're not a perfect window into the past.
Not at all. And frankly, we also have to remember that Sapiens isn't just one culture. We are incredibly diverse.
This is crucial. The source brings up the Oxford versus Cambridge analogy, which I think is great.
It's a perfect way to think about it. Imagine two bands living 30,000 years ago on the exact spots where Oxford University and Cambridge University stand today.
Okay, so same place, same time.
The climate is the same, the ecology is the same, the genetics of the people are the same.
But the culture could be night and day different.
Precisely. Because of the cognitive revolution, our ability to create fiction, myths, social rules, imagined realities, the Oxford band might be patriarchal, aggressive, and worship a stone statue.
While the Cambridge band.
The Cambridge band, just a few days walk away, might be matriarchal, peaceful, communal, and worship the wind. There's nothing in their biology or environment forcing them to be one way or the other.
So asking what was the natural lifestyle of Sapiens is kind of a flawed question from the start.
It's totally flawed. It's like asking what is the natural lifestyle of a modern European. It depends on whether you're in Paris or Berlin or rural Sicily.
The horizon of possibilities was huge.
It was. There was no single human nature when it came to social structure. We were experimenting with everything.
I want to pivot now to the quality of life, because I think most of us, myself included, have this very Hobbesian view of prehistory. You know, that life was nasty, brutish, and short.
Shivering in caves, starving, terrified of saber-toothed tigers.
Exactly. But the sources describe something completely different, something they call the original affluent society.
This is one of the most counterintuitive findings in all of anthropology, and it really forces you to question your assumptions about progress.
So what does it mean? Affluent how?
When we actually crunch the numbers, based on skeletal remains, ethnographic studies, that sort of thing, the average forager works significantly less than the average modern human.
Okay, we need to define work here because they weren't, sitting in meetings or sending emails.
Right. Work is defined as the hours spent obtaining food and maintaining shelter.
The survival stuff.
The survival stuff. Today, a typical affluent worker in an office puts in 40 to 50 hours a week. If you're in the developing world or working multiple minimum wage jobs, it can be 60, even 80 hours. It's a grind.
It is.
But foragers, The data suggests they hunted maybe 1 day out of 3. Gathering, which was the bulk of the calories, took maybe 3 to 6 hours a day.
So their work week was like, what, 35 hours?
Roughly 35 to 45 hours a week, and
Right.
that's the high end. But here's the kicker. Think about the domestic load. They didn't have dishes to wash, no carpets to vacuum, no lawns to mow, no bills to pay, no sitting in traffic on a commute.
When you put it like that leaves a lot of leisure time.
A huge amount. And they spent it gossiping, playing with their kids, telling stories, making art, napping. It was a life rich in time, even if it was poor in material possessions.
But surely the trade-off was food security.
Yeah.
I mean, we assume they were always just one bad hunt away from starvation.
That's the common assumption, but actually the evidence suggests they were often better nourished than the farmers who came after them.
Better nourished. How?
It comes down to variety, the diversity on their plate.
Right, the monoculture problem of farming.
Exactly. A peasant farmer, for most of history, relies on 1 or 2 staple crops, wheat or rice or potatoes. If that single crop fails due to drought or a blight, the entire village starves.
And even if it succeeds.
Even if it succeeds, you eat a lot of it, but your diet is incredibly limited. You're missing key vitamins, minerals, and proteins. You see evidence of this in the skeletons. Stunted growth, bad teeth, anemia.
Whereas a forager is eating, well, everything.
Everything the landscape has to offer. Dozens of different things in a week. Berries, mushrooms, roots, nuts, rabbit, turtle, fish, deer. It was a balanced buffet by necessity.
So if the berries failed one season, you just dug for more roots.
Right. If the deer moved on, you focused on fishing. They had a resilient food system. They were getting a full spectrum of nutrients that made them, on average, taller and healthier than their farming descendants.
And physically, they were just beasts.
Oh, the skeletons tell the story. Ancient foragers were as fit as modern marathon runners. They had a bone density and a dexterity that puts most modern gym goers to shame.
Because they used their bodies in these varied, complex ways every single day.
Constantly. They weren't just running on a treadmill. They were climbing, digging, throwing, tracking. Their bodies were perfectly tuned instruments.
And what about disease? We always hear about the great plagues of history.
Most of the great killers, smallpox, measles, the flu, didn't exist for them.
Really? Why not?
Those are what we call zoonotic diseases. They jumped from domesticated livestock to humans. Smallpox from cattle, measles from sheep and goats. Since foragers didn't have cows or pigs living in their backyards, they didn't have those diseases.
And they were nomadic, which must have helped.
It helped immensely. They didn't live in dense, filthy cities surrounded by their own sewage, which is the perfect breeding ground for epidemics. If someone got sick, the band just moved on and left the pathogens behind.
You mentioned livestock, but there was one exception, wasn't there? The dog?
Yes, the dog was the first domesticated animal thousands and thousands of years before the first wheat stalk was planted. And this relationship was deep. We literally co-evolved. Well, dogs that could read human emotions and signals, a pointing finger, an angry tone got fed, and they survived to pass on their genes. Humans who had dogs were better hunters, and they were alerted to predators at night. It was a huge advantage.
So it wasn't just a tool, it was a genuine bond.
It was a partnership. We find ancient graves where dogs are buried with the same care and ceremony as humans. It's a 15,000-year-old friendship.
Okay, so far, being a hunter-gatherer sounds pretty great. You work less, you eat better, you're ripped, and you have a dog.
It's a compelling picture.
But then the source drops this theory that feels like a personal attack. The brain drain. It claims our brains have actually shrunk since the foraging era.
It's true, and it's deeply counterintuitive. The average brain size of sapiens has decreased over the last 10,000 years.
How is that possible? Aren't we supposed to be getting smarter?
The reason is fascinating. It's the difference between being a generalist and a specialist.
Unpack that for us.
To survive as a forager, you had to be a genius of your environment, an absolute polymath. You needed a mental map of hundreds of square miles of territory.
Right.
You needed to know the growth cycles of hundreds of plant species, which ones cure a headache, which ones stop bleeding, and which ones will kill you in 5 minutes.
The stakes were a little higher than forgetting your grocery list.
A little. You needed to know how to knap flint to make a tool, how to repair a spear, how to track a wounded animal for miles, how to predict the weather from the clouds. Every single person had to know everything to survive.
There were no specialists?
Exactly. The penalty for ignorance was death. But today, We rely on what the source colorfully calls niches for imbeciles.
Harsh, but I see where it's going.
It sounds harsh, but it means you can be completely ignorant of how your food is grown, how your clothes are woven, or even how your car works, and you can still survive and thrive.
Because I just need to know my one little thing.
You just need to know one narrow task like how to code, or how to sell insurance, or how to operate a forklift, and society provides all the rest for you.
We've outsourced our survival knowledge to the collective.
Yes. The collective knowledge of humanity has exploded, but the individual survival knowledge required of each person has plummeted. That allowed our brains to specialize and, in terms of sheer survival processing power, to actually shrink.
Wow. Okay, we need to be careful not to romanticize this too much, though. We've painted this pretty picture of the original affluent society, but the sources also warn us about the dark side of foraging.
Absolutely. We cannot fall into the trap of idealizing nature or creating a noble savage myth. Life was affluent in time and food, maybe, but it was incredibly harsh.
In what ways?
Child mortality was sky high. Without antibiotics, a minor accident, a broken bone, an infected cut from a sharp rock was very often a death sentence. And socially, well, survival sometimes required a level of cruelty that is hard for us to stomach.
The source looks at the Ache people of Paraguay as a case study for this. They lived as foragers in the jungles until the 1960s.
They did.
And there is one story that really stuck with me. The story of the man nicknamed Vulture Droppings.
It's a hard story to hear. There was a middle-aged man in the band who fell sick. He couldn't walk. The band had to keep moving to find food. They couldn't carry him. It wasn't an option.
So they just left him.
They left him under a tree to die. Vultures literally began to circle and perch in the branches above him, waiting for the end.
But he didn't die.
No. Against all odds, he recovered. He got up, somehow tracked the band down, and walked back into camp a few days later.
Which should be this moment of triumph.
In a movie, this would be a hero's return. The music would swell, but the Ache mocked him. They nicknamed him Vulture Droppings because, in their eyes, he was basically refused that even the birds had rejected.
That is a level of psychological hardness, that is. It's hard to wrap your head around.
And it extended to life and death decisions that were made routinely. The sources detail practices of infanticide and euthanasia.
So mercy killing.
Sometimes, if an old woman became a burden and couldn't keep up, a younger family member, maybe her own son, might kill her with a quick axe blow from behind. It was seen as a practical necessity.
And what about infanticide?
If a baby was born funny-looking or without hair, it was often killed immediately. There's even an account from one anthropologist of a man killing a child just because he was, quote, in a bad mood and the child was crying.
That sounds sociopathic to our ears.
It does. It sounds monstrous. But we have to try to contextualize. The Ache were being actively hunted by Paraguayan farmers who wanted their land. They were living under extreme external pressure.
So a baby crying at the wrong moment wasn't just an annoyance.
It could be a death sentence for the whole band. It could reveal their position and get everyone killed. If an old person slowed them down, they could all be caught and murdered.
So it was this brutal calculus, the survival of the group over the individual every single time.
Yes. And yet, and this is the paradox of their society, internally, within the band, they were incredibly generous. They shared every scrap of food. They had no hierarchy. They valued social connection above all else.
So they weren't angels, and they weren't demons.
They were humans. They were complex humans existing in a world where the margins for error were zero.
Let's shift from their social behavior to their inner lives, their spiritual world. We've talked about the Oxford versus Cambridge idea that cultures could vary wildly, but do we know what they actually believed?
We can't know the specifics, the stories, but we are fairly certain we know the structure of their belief, which was almost certainly a form of animism.
Break that down for us. What is animism?
Animism comes from the Latin anima, which means soul or spirit. It's the belief that the world is full of persons, only some of whom are human.
So everything has a consciousness.
A rock has a spirit. A tree has awareness. A deer has feelings and intentions. The cloud is a being. And crucially, humans are not the bosses. We're not at the top of some pyramid. We are just one member of a very crowded, very loud democracy of spirits.
So you don't pray to a god up in heaven. You negotiate directly with the entities all around you.
Right. You have a conversation. If you need to cut down a tree for firewood, you might ask its spirit for forgiveness first. If you are hunting a deer, you might speak to its spirit and explain why your family needs its meat for food.
It's a world of relationships, not resources.
Perfectly put. But here's the tragedy. We know that they were animists, but we have absolutely no idea what stories they told. The specifics are lost forever.
It's like knowing a building is a library, but you go inside and open the books and all the pages are blank.
That's a great way of putting it. However, we do have some physical evidence that hints at just how rich and complex their mental world was. And nothing does that better than the Sungur children.
This part of the research is just haunting.
It's a discovery from a site in Russia dated to about 30,000 years ago. Archaeologists found a burial site with two skeletons, a boy about 12 and a girl about 9, buried head to head.
And they weren't just tossed in a hole. This was a funeral with incredible ceremony.
Incredible is the right word. They were covered, literally draped, in thousands of mammoth ivory beads.
Yeah.
About 10,000 of them in total.
10,000.
And they were wearing hats made of fox teeth and belts adorned with hundreds more fox teeth.
And the source does the math on this to show why it matters so much. To carve a single one of those ivory beads takes about 45 minutes of skilled labor.
Correct. So you do the multiplication, 10,000 beads. That is 7,500 hours of work.
7,500 hours.
If you had one artisan working full-time, 8 hours a day, that is 3 years of work, just for the burial outfit of 2 children.
That just blows the simple egalitarian hunter-gatherer theory right out of the water, doesn't it?
It certainly complicates it immensely. Why did these 2 kids get such an elaborate, costly burial? One theory is that they inherited status.
A prince and princess of the mammoth hunters.
Something like that. If that's true, it implies that strict social hierarchy existed 30,000 years ago.
Or what's the other possibility?
The other, darker possibility is that they were ritual sacrifices. Perhaps they were killed to appease a dark spirit or to ensure a good hunt, and they were buried with all that wealth and pomp to ensure the ritual worked.
We just don't know.
We don't know, but what it proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that they had socio-political codes and religious beliefs that were vastly more complex than just eat, sleep, reproduce. They were investing thousands of hours of their precious time into abstract concepts like the afterlife or social status.
We see the same mystery in the cave art, don't we? We look at these incredible images and we project our own meaning, but we can't read the caption.
Take the famous Lascaux cave in France. There's that one image of a birdman, a stick figure with a bird's head, who is falling backwards with an erect penis, being charged and gored by a bison.
It's one of the most bizarre and famous images from the ancient world.
It is. And what does it mean? Is it a literal record of a hunting accident? Here lies Bob. He got gored by a bison. Or is it a deep shamanistic vision? Is the erection a symbol of life force, or a shaman entering a trance state and passing into the spirit world?
It's a 20,000-year-old Rorschach test. We see what we want to see.
We do. And the Hands Cave in Argentina, all those handprints, stenciled in ochre reaching out from 9,000 years ago.
That one always gets me. It's so moving.
It looks like they're waving at us through time. It's so fundamentally human. But we don't know if it's a greeting, a warning, a signature, or a prayer. The silence is deafening.
This uncertainty brings us to another major debate, and maybe the most consequential one for how we see ourselves. The question of war versus peace.
Right.
There's a popular narrative, you hear it all the time, that war is a modern invention. That it started when we settled down, built fences, and claimed property.
The idea of the peaceful, noble savage.
Exactly. That before agriculture, we were all living in harmony. But the evidence doesn't really support that simple picture, does it?
No, this is another area where the evidence refuses to give us a simple, single answer. It seems that the level of violence varied wildly by region and by time.
So give us the case for peace. Where did it look like a paradise?
Well, there was a major survey of 400 ancient skeletons found in what is now Israel from before the agricultural period. They looked for trauma, cracked skulls, perifractures on the arm bones.
Signs of fighting.
Yes. And they found only one cracked skull that looked like it was caused by human violence. 1 out of 400. That suggests a society that was incredibly peaceful.
Okay, but then you look at a place like the Danube Valley in Europe.
The Danube Valley tells the complete opposite story. They examined about 400 skeletons there from a similar period, and 18 of them showed clear signs of lethal violence.
Now, 18 out of 400 might not sound like a huge war zone to us.
You'd think so, but you have to turn it into a rate. That's a 4.5% violent death rate.
And how does that 4.5% compare to the modern world? Put that in context for us.
It's horrific. If you combine all the deaths from war and violent crime across the entire globe today, the rate is about 1.5%.
1.5%.
So the ancient Danube Valley was 3 times more violent than the modern world. It was significantly more violent than the entire 20th century, even when you include both world wars, the Holocaust, and every other conflict.
Wow. And it gets even worse in other places. The outline mentions a site called Jabal Sahaba in Sudan.
That is a true horror show. It's a 12,000-year-old cemetery where 40% of the skeletons, men, women, and children, had arrowheads or spear points embedded in their bones.
40%.
40%. That is a society in a state of total relentless warfare.
And Offnet Cave in Bavaria.
Another massacre. Archaeologists found a pit that was filled with skulls, mostly women and children and even babies, that had been smashed with clubs or cut with flint knives. It looks like an entire band was ambushed and just wiped out in a single brutal event.
So was the past peaceful or was it violent? The answer is yes.
Exactly. It's the wrong question. Just like today, it depended on where you were and when you were. Some eras and regions were peaceful paradises where people might live their whole lives without seeing violence. Others were absolute abattoirs.
Sapiens have always been capable of both extreme cooperation and extreme violence.
It's not one or the other. It's the full spectrum of human potential. It always has been.
And this really just emphasizes the main theme we keep coming back to here, the sheer diversity of the past. We tend to flatten 60,000 years of human history into the Stone Age, as if it was just one long, boring Tuesday.
And that leads us to what is, for me, the final tragedy of this whole deep dive. The sources call it the curtain of silence.
This is the idea that we have missed the breathtaking historical dramas.
Think about the history you know. The 20th century, the rise and fall of communism, the moon landing, the civil rights movement, the charismatic figures like Gandhi or Churchill or MLK. The ancient world covered 60,000 years. That's 300 times longer than the 20th century. It undoubtedly had figures just as charismatic, wars just as dramatic, religious revolutions just as world-shaking.
They had their own Napoleons and their own Beethovens.
They absolutely did. But because they didn't write it down, and because they built their worlds with wood and bamboo and hides, it's all gone. We have their bones, but we miss the music.
The source mentions bamboo flutes. We know they existed, but they've all rotted away.
We will never hear the melodies they played around the fire. We will never know the names of the prophets who convinced their tribes that the world was made of dreams, or the generals who forged great temporary empires.
It's so humbling. We have this tendency to assume they didn't do anything of importance just because they didn't build pyramids or write epics.
That is a massive mistake. These were the people who shaped our biology, our psychology, and as we're only just now realizing, the physical world itself.
And that brings us perfectly to our final thought. Bit of a teaser for you to chew on until next time. We often have this image, this kind of romantic idea, that when humans first spread out of Africa and arrived in places like Australia or the Americas, we were stepping into a pristine, untouched wilderness.
Nature in perfect harmonious balance, the Eden myth.
Exactly. But that is an illusion. The foragers were there first. And the source leaves us with this really provocative thought. Ancient foragers were the most destructive force the animal kingdom had ever produced.
Not agriculture, not industry, foragers.
Long before the first wheat stalk was planted, long before the first factory smokestack was built, these wandering bands of storytellers were completely reshaping the ecology of the entire planet.
They weren't just living in the world, they were altering it on a massive scale, burning down forests, hunting megafauna to extinction. But the details of that ecological overhaul, well, that is a story for another deep dive.
Indeed it is. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.